Have you ever noticed how two people can take the exact same action and get completely different results? They can send the same message, follow the same strategy, say the exact same words, use the same copy in their messaging and in their marketing, but the outcomes are completely different. One person will get the opportunity, get the clients, get the business momentum, get the money, while the other can feel like they are just constantly pushing but things are just not happening. Now, most people assume that success is about strategy. But as you can see from this example, strategy can be the exact same for two people, but results can be different. And this is because the difference is something much, much deeper. And that is the frequency that you are operating from. So, welcome back to the Full Body Yes podcast, my loves. In the previous episode, we started this series where I break down the PIF framework. And we started by talking about why effort alone doesn't always produce aligned results. We talked about how most advice in the business, mindset, personal development, and manifestation worlds tends to swing between two extremes. So one side says, work harder, execute, follow this exact strategy, and you will succeed. And the other side says, fix your mindset, rewire your subconscious, change your beliefs, say affirmations, heal your self image, visualize more. Now, both contain pieces of the truth, but neither of them looks at the full system that actually produces results. And that system is what I call the PIF framework. And the PIF stands for physical action, identity, and frequency. And today we are diving into our very first pillar, frequency. Now, I'm aware that with PIF, physical action comes first, but really frequency is what drives everything. I just call it PIF because it sounds better. But the first pillar is definitely frequency, because before your actions ever even land in the world, before someone even reads your message, before someone even hears your pitch, before someone decides whether they trust you or not, or whether they want to work with you or not, there is already a signal being broadcast by your creator field. And that signal is your frequency. Now, when people hear the word frequency, they often assume it means energy. It means vague things like vibes, or maybe they think that it is just all about nervous system regulation. And while nervous system regulation is important, and I work on it somewhat with my clients, frequency actually goes much, much deeper than that. Frequency is the state that you are broadcasting into the world while you act and really at any given moment. Now, we have had one or two episodes here in the past where I really broke down frequency. I broke down the different frequencies, how they work, how energy works. So I will link those down below. I think we specifically talked about the frequency of love. That was at a time when we started the very first round of God's Favorite, where one of the main things that we do inside this 40-day experience is root in the frequency of love. So in that episode, I really explained about the different frequencies and how they work. I will not get into that in as much detail today. So definitely, if you want the full breakdown, it is just a really incredible, interesting episode. Honestly, one of my favorites. So if you want the full breakdown, definitely check out the links in the show notes. They're definitely, I don't remember if it was one or two episodes, but either way, really worth listening. I got so much amazing feedback back then. But today I want to break down more in practice how frequency works and the different layers that there are to frequency. Now, the first layer of frequency is regulation and safety. This includes both nervous system regulation, which again, most people that hear about frequency work and energy work think this is mainly what it's about, but it also includes emotional mastery and kind of what your emotional baseline is and what you're broadcasting. But let's start with just feeling safe. This is something that we talked about a few episodes ago, and we talked about manifestation and the body. But the very first, I would say, criterion as to how to achieve your desire is you have to feel safe to receive it. You have to feel like it is safe and it is not overwhelming on your system. I gave the example of this client that wanted the fully booked schedule with loads and loads of client sessions. But then when she actually said that desire out loud, she like choked. She realized that it's not really what she wanted, and that is why the thing wasn't coming. She felt like it wouldn't be safe for her to have so much on her plate. For a lot of people, this kind of connects to money as well, and not feeling safe holding a lot of money, not feeling safe holding a lot of responsibility, right? When you have a big business, when you have a big team, when you have a lot of clients, that is a lot of responsibility. So this is kind of the very first thing here, feeling safe to receive. And this is where nervous system regulation comes in. But it's not just about meditating and breathing, it is about connecting that with the actual desire. So, one thing that I always recommend clients to do, and just you, podcast listeners, is I want you to think about your desire. And once you know that it is aligned and it is what you want, I want you to breathe into it as you say it and as you visualize it. So, just regulating your nervous system on a day to day basis, but not connecting it to your actual goal or desire is, I wouldn't say it's futile. Like, it is still good. It will still help you live an easier life, a more regulated life, but it is not enough when it comes to actually feeling safe with your desire. So, just doing breath work or just meditating without actually connecting it to your desire, without thinking about your desire, visualizing your desire, feeling like you are in the desire, in the goal, well, that's not going to really help you feel safe with it. Now, another thing that this layer is about, this first layer of regulation and safety, is it's your ability to remain steady even when things don't go exactly the way that you expected. And this is another thing that I work on a lot with my clients. And this really connects to this emotional mastery. It's about, can you stay centered when someone says no to you? Can you stay grounded when results are slower than you maybe expected or hoped? Can you hold your center when visibility increases and more people are watching you? Maybe some people criticize you. If your emotional baseline constantly swings between excitement and then anxiety and doubt and pressure, then the signal you are broadcasting into the world becomes inconsistent. And when the signal is inconsistent, the results often become inconsistent too. So, this first layer of frequency is really about regulating your system when you connect to your goal, your desire, and your manifestation, and also learning to master and control your emotion and not the other way around. Most of us live in a constant state of reaction, of just being at the mercy of our emotions. And so many of us don't even realize it. We're not even aware of our emotions. A lot of people can't even name them. A lot of people can find themselves feeling like really down or doubtful and not even know, they can't even trace it back to the moment that actually triggered it all. With emotional mastery, it is such a crucial leadership skill. A lot of it has to do with reflections and decoding reflections, because emotions that come up are always reflections. And it is also about learning how to shift them and how to not to succumb to them, how to see them, how to say thank you, but almost detach from them and not let them impact your signal. Again, when your signal is inconsistent, when you're feeling excited one day and doubtful the next day, your goal will find it very hard to find its way to you. And that is because if you cannot stay steady in yourself, the world will constantly pull you off course, off center. You will not be able to manifest your goals and your desires. And you will also not be able to be the leader that you need to be, because real leaders, leaders that people look up to, that people want to be like them, whether that is coaches and mentors, whether that is prime ministers and presidents, the people that people actually look up to, whether they should or not is a different question, but they all have this emotional mastery skill. You know, CEOs, I work with a lot of CEOs of big companies. I have a lot of big business people in my family as well. I don't know if I've talked about it much on this podcast, but I come from a family of a lot of self-made millionaires and even billionaires. And again, growing up around them and seeing them has really made me see how crucial emotional mastery is. Now, layer 2 of frequency is the signal of who you are. And this really connects more to the I in the PIF method, which is about identity, which we will break down more in the next episode, but I did want to bring it here because while I do separate physical action, identity, and frequency in the PIF framework, just to help you really understand how reality creation works, how creating inevitable results works, and also how to, when something doesn't work, kind of to see what is the root cause of that. But really, all of these layers that cannot really be neatly, put in like different corners of the room. They all very much impact each other. So your self-image, your identity, your personal power and conviction, they also influence your frequency. And this is not what you say about yourself or what you hope is true about yourself. It is really the signal that your body, your presence, and your energy are communicating at any given moment. Two people can say the exact same sentence, but one person lands with authority, with certainty, with conviction, and the other one doesn't. And why is that? That is because one person is broadcasting something like, I belong here, I am steady, I am excellent at what I do, I am worthy of being in this room, I am worthy of being listened to. And the other person can say the same sentence, but they are still broadcasting hesitation, doubt, uncertainty. And people pick up on this much, much faster than you realize. Your frequency communicates long before your words do. And I'm sure we've all had this experience of, I don't know, we might be sitting in a room, in a restaurant, whatever that is, and someone comes in and everyone just inevitably looks to see who they are. The person hasn't even said a word, but they have this presence of, I run this room, I command this room. Look at me. And that is the kind of frequency that comes before the person even says a word. This is what frequency is about. And that really comes from the self-image, what the person really believes about themselves. And the good news is what a person believes about themselves can change. My self-image was in certain areas very, very low until I would say like a year ago. And of course, I'm still working on it daily, strengthening it and, working on my conviction because things can always be made better. But my self-image in the like academic mental area of life was very good, but in other areas of life was really not that good. And that is why I found myself in my previous business running a business for 2 years to the point that it was paying the bills, it was okay, it was running full time, but never to the point that it exploded, that it was making me 10, 20K months like I was seeing people around me doing. Now, of course, there was a bigger plan and a bigger picture. And as I've talked about in this episode, in this podcast before, I am so grateful that business didn't work out because that definitely wasn't my sole purpose. And it wasn't my, one of my sole goals. And what I'm doing now, this business truly is what my soul came into this lifetime to do. So I am so thankful for that and so grateful. But my self-image at that point was so low that no wonder, more people didn't see me as the authority that I wanted them to see me as. So the signal of who you are, what you believe about yourself is so, so crucial. And again, that can change. That can be changed. Even if you are in your soul pull career and clients are not coming yet, people are not as interested as you want them to be, that can be changed. That means that there is a self-image gap and hole there in how you see yourself and how convicted you are, how much you see yourself as the best of the best or not. Again, that can be changed, that can be strengthened. And as soon as the signal of who you are becomes stronger, that also affects the world around you because everything is written in our creator field, as we talked about a lot in this podcast. Our creator field is our electromagnetic field. It holds all of our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions, everything we believe about ourselves to be true. And that writes a script that everyone around us, and this is, by the way, a scientifically proven concept, everyone around us has to act out that script. But I'm not going to say more about this because, again, this has more to do with the identity aspect of the PIF framework, which we'll talk about more next week. I just wanted to bring this here because, as I said, everything is intertwined. So what you think about yourself and also your actions, they impact the signal that you broadcast into the world. So far we talked about layer one, which was the feeling of safety, feeling safe to receive, being regulated, emotional mastery. Layer two of frequency is the signal of who you are, and that really broadcasts out to the world what they should think about you and how they should perceive you. And the third layer of frequency is something that becomes incredibly important when we actually talk about creating results. And that is the difference between operating from wanting versus operating from having. So this is really about broadcasting the frequency of having. When someone operates from wanting, when someone thinks that they want more clients, they want more visibility, they want more money, the universe is very, very literal. So when you say I want, the universe will hear, okay, I need to keep them wanting. They are asking to want. So if you are thinking, if you are saying, if you are broadcasting, I want more money, I want more clients, you're essentially saying, I don't have enough. I don't have enough clients. I don't have enough money. The universe hears, okay, I need to keep them in this lack. That's what they are asking. So let's say if you keep broadcasting that you want more money, the universe will hear it as, okay, how do I keep them wanting more money? Let's send them this bill. Let's make the next month a really low cash month in business. Or if you are saying you want more clients, the universe will just keep all your potential clients away because you need to be wanting clients and not to be having clients. At least that is how the universe understands it. The universe is very, very literal. So when you are in want, that broadcasts the frequency of lack, of not having. When you want something, you don't have it. Think about your phone, for example, or the device that you're using to either listen to or watch this episode. Do you want this device? Do you want this phone, this computer, this iPad? No, because you already have it. Now, that doesn't mean you don't want it. And that is what I find that a lot of people kind of misunderstand, because sometimes when people say you should like lower the want for something, people almost think that, okay, I should tell myself that I really don't want that thing. It's not about not wanting that thing. It's about just like feeling like it is so obvious that it is yours that you don't even need to want it. There's this like really overused metaphor about ordering something from Amazon, which I know it is overused, but let me just put a little spin on it, okay? Because, people talk about manifestation and, feeling very rooted in the fact that it is already yours as kind of like placing an order on Amazon and just knowing that it will arrive. So not being in like doubt or lack because knowing that it will arrive. So that is kind of the same with the frequency of having versus wanting, right? Like you want the thing. It's not like you don't want the parcel that you just ordered from Amazon, but you are not walking around thinking, oh, I really want this thing, because you already ordered it. So you know it is coming. You know it is yours. So when you operate from want, from not having it yet, you are broadcasting lack. You are broadcasting needing, urgency, grasping onto that thing, feeling desperate. And the energy behind any action that you take becomes something like, I hope this works. But when you operate from the frequency of having, and listen, this is not easy. This requires a lot of work, a lot of subconscious work, working on your mind. This is where all the manifestation work really comes in, but the real one, not the, I'm saying this is going to happen, so now it's going to happen, right? You really need to be in a place where knowing it is already yours. And again, let's say knowing that it is on its way, right? Kind of like the Amazon parcel. And I think this is where people sometimes get this wrong, because let's say you can be in a place where you know that the next level of your business is on its way, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow. It is on its way, but you need to stay in the frequency of knowing that it is yours. You are not wanting it. You already know that it is yours. The universe is just catching up. When you operate from this frequency, from the frequency of knowing that it is yours, from the frequency of having, that is when the signal shifts. There is this steadiness, there is this certainty, there is this sense that the result is not something fragile that might disappear at any moment. It is something that is already your normal. It is coming. You are not wanting it. It is yours. It is on its way. You still take the action, but the energy behind the action changed from grasping and wanting to, this is mine. I am just embodying this. And this is really where things become really interesting, because when your frequency stabilizes across these different layers that we talked about, safety, being the authority, being convicted, and the frequency of having, your actions start landing very, very differently. The exact same actions produce different outcomes. Your decisions are easier to make. Your communication becomes so much more powerful. You become that kind of person that we just talked about, that walks into a room and everyone looks at them before they even said a word. And that can be a virtual room, that can be Instagram, that can be YouTube, that can be your website, whatever that is. Your presence changes. People notice you. Opportunities respond differently to you. And that is because your signal has changed. You are now feeling safe. to receive. You are not letting your emotions control you. You are a master of your emotions. You know who you are and your worth, and that broadcast outwards. And you also know that you already have. You broadcast having rather than wanting. And that makes all the difference. Now, there is another piece to frequency that I think is really important to talk about, and that is staying power. That is tenacity. Because one of the biggest differences that I see between people who eventually build the life, the business, the vision that they want, and people that kind of abandon it midway, and I have seen a lot of people in my years in business start their businesses thinking it's going to be amazing and then leaving when it's been 3 months, so it's been 6 months, so it's been a year, and it's not as huge as I thought it would be. The difference between these different types of people, the people who follow through, even if it takes them 10 years to build their empire. And if you go and listen to interviews with incredibly successful business people, and again, those are people that I have listened to podcasts with, those are people that are in my family, so I know what they went through to achieve what they wanted. And those are people like some CEOs that I actually work with. All of those people will tell you the same thing. And again, if you go to interviews on podcasts, you will hear the same thing. They stayed. They stayed and they worked their asses off for sometimes years until the vision became as big as they wanted it to be. So the difference is really that ability to stay connected to your vision, stay connected to your direction, even when results take longer than expected. Building something meaningful, especially when it's your soul's pull, soul work, soul business, almost always takes longer than people think. There is a reason for that. I might make a whole episode about it in the future. If you're interested, let me know and I will definitely consider this. Now, what usually causes some people to stop, to abandon their vision, to abandon their business is emotional instability. It is doubt. It is comparison. It is losing conviction. And this is where frequency, and again, also identity, they're very much intertwined. Identity we'll talk about next week, but this is where frequency and identity are so powerful and crucial and should not be overlooked. Because when your emotional baseline is stable, when your identity is rooted, when you are truly connected to your vision and broadcasting that it is already yours, no matter, even if it takes 10 years, you know that it is yours. That is when you develop something that most people don't have. And that is the difference between people who are incredibly successful, build empires, and the people who always have the vision, just staying in the realms of dreams. And that is staying power. That is you developing staying power. That is the ability to keep showing up long enough for results to catch up. For example, I can tell you an example about myself. I have been recording this podcast consistently for a long time now. It has been over a year. And I have been putting out podcast episodes almost weekly for over a year. Now, there were long stretches when very few people were listening. And do you think I stopped? No. I still showed up almost every single week and I recorded episodes, not because it was easy, but because I had always decided that this was part of my path. We have had an episode here in the past where I talked about building for the future and not for now. I, from the very first episode, had the intention of building this incredible well of knowledge for people who even find me in 5 years to go back and binge and get so much value out of. I knew from day one that I was here for the long run, not for 3 episodes or 10 episodes. Now, I had a client, and that actually made me really sad. I had a client who I saw that for her, actually starting a podcast and obviously continuing and staying with the podcast would be a huge revenue source for her business. And we had one session, one intuitive read, and she went and recorded 3 episodes of the podcast, and that was it. Now, I don't know what happened there. I assume she maybe wasn't seeing the traction that she was expecting, and she stopped the podcast. And when I see that, and by the way, this is why having a long process with someone and not just booking a one-off session or one-off intuitive read is so important, because again, that staying power, even with the mentor or with the coach, is so important. But they also keep you accountable to what you need to do, even when things seem tough, even when things aren't working the way you expected. That just made me really sad, because intuitively I knew that that was going to really accelerate her results. But again, this is the difference between people who massively succeed and people who just abandon things in the middle. Again, with this podcast, I knew from day one, I decided this was a huge part of my path. My work, and if you've listened this far, you know, my work is very deep. It is not something that I can really relate to someone in a 60-second reel on TikTok or Instagram. And I knew that the podcast is a huge, huge source of growing my business, of getting clients. And by the way, even though I have about 4,000 followers on Instagram and my views slash listens to this podcast are much lower than 4,000, I have gotten probably 95% of my clients so far in this business through this podcast and not through Instagram. When something is part of your past, you do not quit just because the results are maybe slower than you expected. And again, I had months when views and listens to this podcast were extremely low, but I did not let that stop me even for a second. When something is part of your soul path, your soul pull, and you get the intuitive knowledge that this is something that you should do, you show up. And you keep showing up and you refine and you keep growing. And that is the kind of internal leadership that makes results inevitable. Now, one objection people say, often people that are not very spiritual, right? But they will say, I don't have time for emotional or energetic work. I just need to get to work. I just need to execute. I just need to take action. So, first of all, I will say actions are extremely important. We live in a physical world. We are energetic beings in a physical world. So, actions are incredibly important. 50% of our time, energy, and effort should go into physical action. So I do not want you to think that this is something that I dismiss. And again, this is the P in the PIF framework, physical action. But the reality is that misaligned frequency and identity as well, but we're talking about frequency today, creates resistance even when you use the most incredible strategy. I can tell you again, I have told this story so many times, but when I was an online fitness coach, I was in very, very pricey mentorships and I was following all the strategies to a T, and no matter what, the things were just not working. And misaligned frequency, you can have the best, absolute best strategy in the world. If you have a misaligned frequency, things just won't work. And that is why a lot of clients come to me after working with incredible business mentors, business coaches, and still not seeing the results, even though they worked again with very, very well-known coaches and they had all the frameworks, all the funnels, all the strategies, all the prompts and hooks and whatever they needed, and things still didn't work. And that is because their identity and frequency underneath were misaligned. When your frequency is stable, when you feel safe to receive, when you master your emotions and you don't wobble every time you hear a no, or you have like a low cash month or a quiet period, when you are so rooted in who you are, when you're so convicted in who you are, and when your frequency matches that of your desire and you've broadcast having rather than wanting, that is when all of the resistance disappears. That is when execution becomes so much simpler and the same kind of strategies will finally lead you to the results that you want. Now, what we talked about today, what we covered today, frequency, is the first pillar inside of my free training, Make It Inevitable, which covers the PIF framework in full, including actionable tools you can take straight away. When you learn how to stabilize your emotional baseline, how to shift your internal state, how to master your emotions, how to operate from the frequency of having and not from wanting, your actions start producing results so much more easily, so much more efficiently. So inside the Make It Inevitable free training, I walk you through the PIF framework in detail. I give you tools that you can start using immediately for each layer of that framework. If you want to access this training, again, it is completely free. You can find the link in the show notes / description box. And for now, I want to invite you to start observing your baseline frequency this week. And that is not the state that you enter when you meditate, when you do breath work, or when you visualize. That is the state you operate from while you are making everyday decisions. And if your highest value is your business right now or making money, notice the decisions that have to do with these things. Are you broadcasting steadiness, or are you broadcasting urgency? Are you operating from having or from wanting? because awareness is always the first step in shifting everything. And then you can go to the Make It Inevitable free training and see how you can start shifting your baseline frequency. Now, in the next episode, we're going to move into the second pillar of the PIF framework, which is identity, personal power, and conviction. We touched upon it a little bit today, but we'll talk about it even more next week. We'll talk about why self-image and personal power and conviction are so crucial to achieve your goals, to manifest your desires. And once you understand that layer and how to work with it, the whole system will start making even more sense. So this is it for today, my loves. Thank you so much for being here. As always, if you want more one-on-one personalized support, you can book an intuitive read with me, book a session with me, or join the Sovereign Mentorship for the highest level of one-on-one support. All of the details are in the show notes. And if you enjoyed this episode, if you enjoyed the podcast, as always, I would very much appreciate it if you go on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and you rate us at 5 stars. If you're watching this on YouTube, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. This really helps the podcast get out there more. If you really want to go a bit extra, you can even share it on your stories on Instagram, or share it with a friend that you know would benefit from listening to this podcast and from listening to this episode. So this is it from me today. I will see you next time when we break down the identity layer of the PIF framework. Thank you so much for being here. As always, I love you so much, and I'll see you next time.